Well, welcome back, everybody. And today we're going to finish up with the first chapter in our course. And today we're going to take a look at the evolution of organizational development. We're also going to be taking a look at Blake and Mouton's managerial grid, which talks about different types of managerial styles and some other elements that are important as we round out this first chapter. Now, in the beginning, I'm going to show you a little cartoon that kind of explains the evolution of organizational development. It's just something I throw in there to kind of break up the monotony of just PowerPoints and lectures, but it should give you really an animated version of what we're going to be talking about today. So let's go ahead and start out with the history of organizational development, and then we'll move on afterwards.
Constructed using Powtoon.
Well, let's go ahead and finish up Chapter 1 as we take a look again at the general introduction to organization development. Now, what you see on the screen is really the evolution of organizational development and change. And you see the 5 stems of OD practice. And it all began, as you can tell down here at the bottom, around the 50s with laboratory training. Now, back at this time, there was a group that Kurt Lewin had from MIT. And what they did was take a look at a Jewish what they call the American Jewish Congress. And they had a summit. The community leaders were brought together to learn about leadership and discuss problems. And from that, the researchers started to talk among themselves about what behaviors and really group dynamics they had observed from these community leaders getting together. And that sparked an interest in doing more research. And then the Navy got involved, the Office of Naval Research and Education, and then we, from that, began to take a look at creating laboratories and starting to study the field of development and organizational dynamics and people dynamics a little more stringently. And then we came to action research and using survey feedback. From there, we went to normative approaches, then quality of work life, and then strategic change. So the subsequent slides will talk about each one of these. Now, what is action research? Well, action research, they found, needed to have some type of relevance to the actual work that's being done in the environment. So they figured any research worth doing would have to be relevant to the workplace. So they went about collecting data. And they followed this systematic approach that you see here, from collecting data to getting data feedback, and then planning for action. What do we do with the data now that we have it? And from this feedback, where do we go from here? And then once they have a plan, they implemented the plan. And then from there, they followed up, collected data on what they found, and then you can start the process over again. So it's a cyclical type of approach where you're constantly collecting, analyzing, implementing, and then following up with data that you find out in the field. Now, Rensis Likert came up with the idea of participative management. And what he found were there were 4 types of levels, really, that came into play. And now all of this is under the normative background approach. Exploitive, authoritative systems, this is the autocratic method of management. Here you see the manager or the owner being in complete control. The worker did not have any voice or say-so in anything. They were considered to be just tools to be used any way that the owners saw fit. From benevolent or to benevolent, you see more of a paternal type of system. They were given more authority, a little bit more, but not a whole lot more. Consultative systems gave the worker a little bit more autonomy and freedom. And then participative group systems, this is where they have what we see today or trying to get to today, and that is the empowerment, employee decision making, and so forth. So really what you see here with Likert is a progression of what he found evolving in the workplace from autocratic, authoritative, to the more participative group systems. Now, organizational conditions that call for development efforts. Here's where you need to change a management strategy. And the little sub-point is that today companies must re-examine existing strategies. Think about those companies that no longer exist today. Think about the companies today that are floundering, such as Sears. These are people that didn't change their strategy. They were slow to move, they were slow to react, and as such, they're suffering for that. And there are some companies that you probably remember growing up, they're no longer here. So these are companies that have failed for one reason or another to meet the demands of the environment, and as such, they no longer exist. Also, companies need to make the climate more consistent with both the individual's needs and the changing needs of the environment. And this is difficult, where you try to meet the individual and the environment in the middle and try to be that middle ground that can facilitate the needs of both. And sometimes you need to change the culture. The culture today can be toxic if it is one that is holding on to just the old ways of doing things. I don't want to change. I don't want to do anything differently. And we have to foster today, and this is why development is important, a culture that is responsive to innovation and change. You're not going to be thinking of new things when you are stuck in the same old grind and in the same old rut. So these are some of the reasons that call for the need for organizational development. Also, the need to change structures and roles, the need to improve intergroup collaboration, and this is just getting people to talk, and that's to open up the communication system as well. I was in a school, a college that failed. It went bankrupt because the structure did not have a good communication system. No one talked to each other, and as such, the people were isolated. They didn't have any type of community or unity, and as a result, they went under. The need for better planning. Also, we need to change motivation and increase it, and sometimes in some places create it. And then we need to make sure that we're adapting to a new work environment, and that's also a big thing when it comes to innovation and change. Quality of work life is another element in that model that we saw earlier. Quality of work life is more than just balancing work and personal time. Early quality of work designs, as you see here, job satisfaction and mental health were considerations. Job enrichment and self-managed teams began to emerge. Workers were given authority and were able to do certain things, but today it's expanded, where today we look at employee productivity and satisfaction that comes through change and development. We also have a large-scale organization, work groups, quality circles, that comes from what we call total quality management, and we'll talk about that later. Employee involvement, Six Sigma. These are all TQM or total quality and management techniques that increase and enhance development, which also has an impact on change and the ability to innovate. Now, Blake and Mouton are researchers that looked at management styles, and essentially what we see, and we'll look at it here in the next slide, you had those who had a concern for people, and then you have a concern for production. Now, if, let's say, for instance, the upper left-hand quadrant, the country club leader, they had a low concern for production, but everybody was happy because that's all the manager cared about was the people. Below it, you see the opposite. You see a low concern for people, a low concern for production. So this manager has just checked out. There's no involvement at all. At the bottom right-hand side, you see someone who is task-oriented. They have a high concern for production, but a low concern for the people. And then you have at the upper right hand a team management approach where you want production and people to be on top. And then the middle of the road approach. So those are the different, from their study, these are the different styles that they came up with that you see in business. And today you may experience any of these at any given time. And you'll see these throughout your life, or career at least, where you'll have those who just are hands off, you have those who micromanage, you have those who just don't care, they've checked out, and then you have those who try to foster teamwork and productivity at the same time. So those are just some of the examples, and overall, this gives you kind of an evolution of where we're at when it comes to development and change. Well, everyone, today we were able to take a look at how organizational development evolved. It started out as training groups, and we're still growing today. Organizational development is becoming a fairly substantial presence in most organizations today as we realize the need to leverage our human resources. And in order to do that, we have to develop them. We have to produce in them people who can think, people who can act, people who can be responsible and accountable. And all of that is the result. These are the results of a comprehensive and effective organizational development program. We also took a look at Blake and Mouton's managerial grid. Now, as you were looking at that, were there any areas that you could identify with? You might be the task-oriented person. Now, this isn't just for people who are in business. This can go to ministry as well and have applications in ministry. You may be a task-oriented person. If you are, how do your people respond to that if you're in management or leadership? What about the laissez-faire or the country club type of leader who really just lets things go as they are and don't exert a whole lot of influence or authority or presence within the workplace, whether it be the church or an organization? Maybe you're the middle of the road type of manager who tries to incorporate all of these different types of strategies into your management style and model. Each of these can be appropriate given the right circumstance and opportunity. There's times when you can be hands off. Once your people are trained and they're developed and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, then why should you be very engaged with them other than just to encourage them and equip them for whatever support they may need? And at that point, you're more of a coach than you are anything else. And by the same token, there's times when you're going to have to be more assertive and more directive, especially when people are brand new to the organization. They may not know how to be able to function or know the tasks that are involved with whatever responsibility you give them. So you're going to have to be more hands-on. Irregardless, these are areas that organizational development can help to enhance and to improve your relationship, your effectiveness, and as a result, your employees or your ministers' effectiveness as well. You know, Jesus did this. He developed the disciples. He trained, he taught, he modeled, and then when it was all over with, he allowed them to go and demonstrate what was necessary for them to be able to minister and accomplish the tasks at hand. So we see organizational development or elements of it even back during biblical times. And that is the best model when you use Jesus as the model for management and leadership and developing, you can't go wrong. Well, that's all we have for today. We will get together tomorrow and we'll take another look at innovation and some of the things that go along with that. Until then, you have a good day. God bless you, and we'll see you tomorrow.